Hey, good morning to those of you that are watching at home. We've joined together here for this week's concept of how you can live better. And we have a very interesting subject, being that in the United States, for those of you that are outside of the United States, we celebrate once a year the concept of Labor Day. So today we're going to have a subject that deals with Karma Yoga, which is really the yogi's approach to being the householder and still reaching God and consciousness with the infinite and the eternal. It's a very, very interesting subject. And now, if you would you sit back in your chairs, put both feet flat on the floor or your ankles crossed, whichever is most comfortable for you. Let's take a few moments to work upon the health of your bodies. If you would, let your eyes close and just think along with me, if you would. For a few moments, I turn away from the outer world that surrounds me, that I may enter into the innermost world of my own mind, soul, and spirit. To let loose of all of those things that have troubled me, disturbed me in the week just past. To release from my consciousness any type of physical disturbance that I may have experienced. And to open my consciousness and the consciousness of my body to the indwelling, health, giving, and maintaining presence of God here within me. And so my mind is focused in upon itself, in upon the light of God's Spirit here within me. That the light of God's Spirit within me may heal and bless my body. For indeed, the only thing that really is life in my body is God's presence. Therefore, God bestows upon my body and my outer consciousness the gift of health and the gift of healing right here and right now. That whatever is out of balance in the energy factors comprising the rhythms and motions of my body are being restored, renewed, balanced, so that I feel a sense of peace, a sense of calm, a sense of well-beingness throughout the entirety of all levels of my mind, which reflect through my nervous system into the internal workings of my body, that all parts of my body are in perfect rhythmical attunement with the natural laws of health and well-being established by the true life that lives within me. The true life that is the presence of the eternal and the infinite God, maker of the universe, dwelling here within myself. And so light shines within all of the millions of cells of my body, provided by the light God force that dwells here within me. And so I think here in this state of beingness only loving thoughts, beautiful thoughts, beautiful loving feelings. For I am at peace in the presence of the Spirit and the mind that created me. The Lord my God, with which I am one, dwelling here in God's creation, God's temple, the true church, my body, reflecting the light that it contains, my body in perfect balance, harmony, peace, and one-ment. To the indwelling spirit that created my outer self, body and mind, I give thanks for health, healing, and restoration received. I let this be so throughout the entirety of my being. I give thanks that it is so, and so it is. Many years ago, when I first started to reawaken to the spiritual truth that lies within me and within everybody, I began a search that took me away for a while from the things that I had been brought up with, i.e. Christianity, and took me into a voyage into Eastern religions and Eastern philosophies. And through that, I became very, very familiar with yoga. And I discovered that there were 5 major branches of yoga. That sometime in the way in the past, in spirituality on this planet, some yogis had figured out a very, very wonderful thing, that you can't have a spiritual path that is necessarily the same for all people. People are different. Some people are very physical types of people. Others are people who are philosophical. Others are people who are more feeling and loving and devotional. Then there are those that are just out there in the workplace. And so they got together and they put their heads together and or were inspired through the God presence within themselves to do the following: to create a system of yoga whereby a person could reach union with God regardless of their soul's pattern or how they were born, whether they were physical in nature, philosophical, mental, whatever it might be. And so the 5 major yogas were created. There was the Hatha Yoga, which most of you are familiar with. It deals with physical postures, breathing, exercise, etc. Then on top of that, they came along and they created Jnana Yoga, which was for people who love to philosophize about, speculate, very close to metaphysical philosophy as to what the nature of the universe is about. Who am I? What am I? Where have I been? And where am I going? They also noticed that for the people that were very emotional, very loving, feeling types of people, they came up with the concept of Akita Yoga, which was the yoga of the devotional type. And then they came up with the mental type of yoga, for those that were very, very mental and wanted to explore the mysteries of life through consciousness. And they also came up with Karma Yoga. Now, why did they have Karma Yoga? Well, the other ones made sense, but Karma Yoga was for the people who were out there in the marketplace, who had already committed themselves, who had a few children running around the house. I mean, how can you meditate that way? And obligations, married, whatever it might be. They didn't have significant others in those days. Maybe they did, I don't know. But at any rate, the person was very, very involved with what they called the yoga of the householder. That's what it's called, the yoga of the householder. For the person that's out there doing, punching the time clock, doesn't have time to retreat off into a cave somewhere, doesn't have time to sit in Raja Yoga watching the energies of the mind flit by and trying to pierce into those energies. Doesn't have the time to sit around in Jnana Yoga with philosophical discourse to say what is on their mind and suddenly wear out their intellect and come to a place of union with God. Didn't have the time to sit around and get into all of the different lotus postures and do the breathing exercises, etc., etc. And so this idea came about, Karma Yoga. And interestingly enough, I presented the thought that if there was any of the yogas that Jesus practiced, actually he practiced all of them, but he did practice without identifying it, without saying it, Karma Yoga. Jesus said, "It is not I, but the Father which doeth these good works." Jesus also said, "I'm about my Father's business." Those are statements that you could find coming out of a person who was committed to practicing Karma Yoga. So when we talk about Karma Yoga, for those people who may be very, very bent on total Christian commitment, we're still talking about what Jesus espoused in his day without saying, hey, I'm practicing Karma Yoga or I'm a karma yogi. No, it's still the same thing. Because you see, truth is truth. It can come under many different flavors, many different names, many different guises and so forth, many different religions, isms. But truth is the same. And so no matter where a person gets it, the principle is the only thing that really counts. Whether the principle is the same in Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, whatever a type of ism, Judaism, it makes no difference. It is the principle. The theology merely guises the principle in semantics. That's all it does. It guises the principle in semantics. So one person calls it one thing from one religion, another person calls it something else from another religion. Now, I don't know how many of you have noticed, but as an example, because of all of the things that are going on in the world today and with all of the emphasis that has been placed recently on the eastern situation of Iraq and so forth, you have some emphasis now that has been brought forth on the Muslim practices, as it were. And for those of you that have kept up on this or watch a little bit of television, it's sort of interesting, if you think about it, that here the Muslims are called 5 times a day to go to the mosque and pray. Think about that. 5 times a day. And what's the purpose of it all? The purpose is to keep centered and attuned to Allah or God. Again, it makes no difference what name you call it. It's all the same. It's all the same God. It's all... But if you think about this, actually, if a person was unemployed, not a bad practice. 5 days getting down there with your fellows, because you've got all of this energy. In a group, you have group energy, so you get together, you squat down, get down on your knees, bow your heads. Yes, it's ritual. Yes, it's outer, but it keeps 5 times a day reminding the person that there is a higher power. Now, there's something to be said for that. How could we pull this off in this society? Now, all of us know I'm not going to ask you to come in here 5 times a day, because you couldn't do it unless you were totally unemployed or retired and so forth. But that just isn't the way our Western culture works. But if the principle is to remind ourselves to keep centered, that's the principle of showing up 5 times a day in the Muslim idea and tradition. Can't we do the same without having to show up in a mosque or a church or a synagogue or a temple? That's why Karma Yoga is handy. It solves the dilemma of the Westerner. Even though the whole thing was conceived aeons ago, it solves the dilemma. Now, how then can you do this? Well, the only thing that happens really when the person goes to the mosque 5 times a day is, again, they center in, they acknowledge that there is a higher order of life, a higher presence. So how can we get ourselves to do this without having to go to any one place? They're disciplined to be there. The only thing that's involved is really the mind. So let's look at the affirmations. The first says Karma Yoga, which is defining it. It says, I understand that Karma Yoga can lead me to achieving conscious union with God, or conscious God union, by achieving a union of my daily work with God's presence within me. A union of my daily work with God's presence within me. So what does that mean? Wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, I dedicate it to the presence of God within myself. If it's something that's good that I've just done, I give total credit to the presence of God within myself. Now, what happens when you give total credit? Normally, in our Western culture, we take credit. Ho, look at the thing I just did. Personal ego. The more personal ego we have occupying the conscious mind, the more we are repressing the superconscious or the God mind or infinite consciousness or infinite mind. So the more we can defeat the personal ego, which is the only real devil a human being will ever really come into contact with, lives within themselves, and is known as the personal ego. If we keep substantiating that whatever good is taking place in our life is as the result of the God presence, not our personal ego, we magnify the God presence inside of the consciousness within ourselves. Think about that. At the same time, let's suppose you mess up. Well, instead of battering your personal ego and saying, oh, how awful I am, I did this wrong, I was a bad boy, a bad girl, I messed up. By saying that, you're glorifying and you're giving credence to a personal ego again. You see that? Once again, every time you say, I've messed up, you're saying my personal ego exists. But your personal ego doesn't exist. It's really an illusion created by the God presence within in order to have creation, i.e. to give the illusion of a multitude or varying degrees of manifestation. So, if you've got something you messed up on, you just release it. I release the illusion of this mess up to the healing presence, the truth within myself that knows I never really messed up, that I just happened to have a moment of forgetfulness. What's the moment of forgetfulness? The moment of forgetfulness is to interfere with the true life that lives within you, or the God presence within you, to have momentarily repressed that and gone into a trip or an ego trip. All of you have heard the expression ego trip. It is the source of all your misery. Your make-believes, your illusions, it is the source of all your misery. And as long as you want to wallow in that, then you're going to be wallowing in your personal ego. Nobody's done anything to you. We do it to ourselves. And we do it through this concept of thinking that we are one thing and God is something else. That's what happens. Now, the work, as you go through it, whatever you're doing, it's not for you. It's that God has created you, the true life that lives within you has created the outer you, the human part of you, to live out the drama for which you were created. One person to play the guitar, another person to sing, another person to play the piano. It's all part of an orchestra. We all have our position, all manifesting the one life. The moment you break away from that, you get hurt. People do bad things to you. Suddenly you're a victim. Suddenly your mind becomes so distorted, so overwhelmed by your personal ego that boy, oh boy, then there's got to be a devil, because I don't want to take the responsibility. And those that don't want to take the responsibility can make the devil the biggest thing on earth. Think about this. The devil made me do it. We laugh when we hear that. Was it Flip Wilson or something that used to do that type of routine? The devil made me do it. Well, we only do it to ourselves. So the first thing says morning dedication, but it doesn't say show up at local mosque. Okay? Save on gas. So you're waking up in the morning. Let's see what's. Oh yes, as I awaken and prepare for my work day, I dedicate the entirety of my work to God's presence within me. I'm not thinking, boy, I'm going to go there into the office today and have a slam dunk and show all the other people how great I am. I'm not thinking, boy, I don't want to go to work today because I'm going to be slam dunked. I don't do these things. Stupidity is the personal ego. Ride 'em, cowboy and cowgirl, into oblivion. Yeah. So when you first awaken in the morning, you just simply say to yourself, I dedicate this day, my work, to the presence of God within me. Doesn't have to be word for word, just use words that are comfortable for you. It's just the idea is the same. Okay, so you go through your morning. And as you're going through your morning, remember every good thing that happens, thank you, God. I acknowledge you, God. Thank you for letting this happen, God. From the greatest thing, hey, you made the big sale, to the littlest thing, hey, you found the parking space. Or, hey, I happened to look over there and I didn't run over that person. How many of you ever had near misses like that, where all of a sudden you say to yourself, oh my God, if I hadn't turned a second ago, I could have hit that person. You think that's coincidence? There is no such thing as coincidence. It all happens for a reason. And the reason is a life that is dwelling in you that gave you that momentary shot of awakening to turn your head this way or that way to avoid perhaps a collision or avoid a calamity of some kind. How many of you believe that, incidentally? I've had it happen enough times. All right. So we have midday dedication. At midday, I dedicate all that has happened in my work in the morning and all that will happen in the afternoon to God's presence within me. So what does all of this mean? It means you're working for God, not for yourself. You're working for a presence that is infinite and eternal. You are acknowledging that the real life inside of you is faking that you're Tom, Dick, Harry, Mary, Jane, whoever, in order to have manifestation, giving the illusion of many, many different lives, but in truth there's only one life. So in order to have this illusion of creation, you play out the game, but you keep this feeling of I am ever one, and my afternoon is going to be, God's sitting at my desk. God's driving the car. God's making the sale. You got a sales call to make? You're a little bit shaky about it if you were a salesperson. You're ready to go and up to the receptionist or knock on the door or whatever. It's not I, but God that makes this sales call. It's part of the divine drama. You take all of the pressure off of yourself then. There's no pressure on the personal ego then. Instead of trembling, why do people tremble? Why do people get tight? Why do people have stage fright? Immediately, their personal ego. An entertainer will tell you, at least I think most of them will, that even a seasoned entertainer can have a moment of just uneasiness, which we could qualify as stage fright, if they step out before an audience where there's just a momentary type of thing, where they may feel something. They may lose the first line of a song or of a play or whatever. But the moment, then something else happens. The God presence inside takes over, and the person then gets into a creative energy mode, and everything is on automatic. Now, the same thing applies when you're at work. Don't think, because you're on a stage when you're at work. There may not be people in an audience sitting there. The curtain may not have pulled forth, but you're the same as an actor or an actress on a stage. Think about that. Then you've gone through the afternoon. It's evening time. And it says, at the conclusion of my workday, I dedicate all that has been a part of my work to God's presence within me. Jesus said, why call me good? It is not I that doeth these good works. It is the Father that is within me. I'm about my Father's business. So let your light shine before men, that they may see and glorify your Father which is in heaven. Which means that as you go about your daily business, let your light shine. Which means that you're not going around carrying a Bible and say, believe, the end is near. But instead, through action, through word, through thought, through deed, and so forth, you're doing good. And the idea here is to do good. Now, I know we have that old expression that many of us were brought up with in this country, a do-gooder. But the truth of the matter is, if we do good through God's good within ourselves, which doesn't involve our personal ego, then we're not going to be giving ourselves a hero badge and walk around with a chest full of personal ego medals. So, then you're ready to go to sleep. Your head's touched the pillow. Just before going to sleep, I dedicate all my day to God's presence, giving thanks for what I feel was good, and releasing to God's healing presence all I feel was not. That way you go to sleep a happy soul, a happy manifestation, and you have happy dreams. Now, when a person has really bad dreams, nightmarish dreams, well, you don't have to get a dream interpretation book or go to a dream analyst. There's something that's not right there. And if there's something that's not right, that's causing all these nightmarish dreams, I can guarantee you 100,000% it is personal ego. You are in personal ego land. You have divided yourself up into all of these different neuroses, and they're coming up as dream images and haunting you in the middle of the night. And that's the way it is. So, you want to get rid, you want to sleep better? You don't take some new medication with all of its side effects to go to sleep because you're having all these bad dreams. You get rid of the personal ego. Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. And he went up into a high mountain where he had learned a great amount about what life is, what he is, what his life living within him is. And he said then, upon a high mountain, which is a high level of consciousness, that's what it symbolizes in the New Testament, get behind me, Satan, which is let the illusion of personal self and personal ego, because after all, what was it that was tempting? I'll give you all of the kingdoms of this world. I'll tempt you with all of the niceties of this world. Who falls for that? The personal ego. The personal ego that's got to have the biggest this, the biggest that. Live in grandeur because the person is so insecure within themselves. It doesn't matter whether we have things or we don't have things. I've had things and I haven't had things. I have been just as happy and just as much of a laugher and enjoying life when I didn't as when I do. It makes no difference. It's the solidity, the consistency of the soul, as it were. That is the only thing that really matters. Part of the junk that is part of the concepts that where people sometimes are so trained in their thinking and in metaphysical approaches to spirituality that about the only thing that they can focus in on, got to get rich, can't be rich enough, thin enough. Oh, please. Has anybody thought of balance? Has anybody thought about throwing in a little bit of health, a little bit of love, a little bit of compassion, a little bit of the niceties of what life really is about? No. So, on it goes. So before you go to sleep at night, think about God. And release to God. If you aren't happy with this day, release it. Don't take it into sleep with you. Then you're going to have bad dreams. Because whatever you have been fearing on a conscious level takes image in dream images and comes to haunt you in the middle of the night. Whether it's as grotesque monsters or things that are absolutely sickening by human standards, things that you see that, are depraved, degraded, whatever. God didn't put those there. Your sense of personal ego and division between yourself and God, and don't tell me you're spiritual. Because I know people who are absolutely miserable that can quote me the Bible chapter and verse from one side to the other, and so help me God, you wouldn't want to live with them. You wouldn't. They drive you crazy. Judgmental, finger pointing. Oh my God. You know, years ago I told a group of people, hey, if you got a friend that's always criticizing everybody, get rid of them out. Get them out away from you. Because sooner or later, it's going to come to you. You'll be the object. There are enough people in this world, dear friends, that are uplifting. Enough people that want to look on the positive side, not deluded people. A spiritual person sees all things. The so-called good, the so-called bad, and all variations of the same. Doesn't put their head in the sand and pretend that something isn't there when it is. At the same time, doesn't always see the world as being so bad and so negative. So, God is a laugher. Why do we respond to comedians? Because it's inside of us. God creates comedians. God creates comedians so God can laugh, find something to laugh about, be amused about. God doesn't like to cry. God gives us the ability to cry, to be able to release from our souls loss, heartache, etc., etc., gives us this ability to bring peace to our souls when our tears have finally come to a conclusion and we feel this sense of relief and release at last. But by and large, God is a laugher. God likes to laugh. And so you want to see how spiritual you are? I ask you to think about this. How many times do you laugh at yourself? Or are you so protective over your personal ego that you can't see the amusement of something when you mess up on something? Or where you have this momentary breakup of communication between yourself and Almighty God? Who is the true life within you? So, if we dedicate everything that we're doing during the day, it's God that's doing it through us. If we mess up and something goes wrong, personal ego happened to inject there, but we say we release that. And in the morning, and in the midday, and in the evening, and in the pre-sleep, and then we take at least once a day and squeeze in meditation. We've now gotten to God 5 times during that day. Without going to the temple, the mosque, the church, the synagogue, the cathedral, or just hanging out somewhere. We have visited God 5 times during the day. Simple to remember now. We've got to make it simple. That's one of the things of basic religion. Make it simple. Okay. You wake up, you dedicate. You eat your lunch, you dedicate. You eat your dinner, you dedicate. You go to sleep, you dedicate. And somewhere in the midst of all of this, you meditate, in which you communicate. So you dedicate and you communicate. Because you don't have to say anything or do anything or be anything. All you have to do to meditate is just close your eyes and stay awake. So some of you laugh because I know what you think. That's easier said than done. Intuition. Through my practice of meditation, God intuitively directs me throughout my work day and in all areas of my life. If you are constantly giving up everything that you're doing each day, constantly acknowledging God as the doer, then your intuitive processes are open. Intuitively, your mind is being signaled what to do, what not to do, when to speak and when to shut up. There's an old expression out of India that I absolutely love. He who does not know speaks. He who knows does not speak. Which is really, when you really know God and God's mysteries, you really don't speak. Or if you speak, you can only go so far. Because if you go farther than that, no one will understand you. Or it's like sometimes one of my favorite stories, the young man that goes into town after having been in a Zen monastery for a number of years. And he had been in, let's say, 5 years as an example. He'd been in the Zen monastery. The head of the monastery tells him, you can go into town and spend the weekend in town now. See what life is like, see how you've adjusted from what you've learned here in the monastery. Young man goes into town, spends the weekend in town, comes back. says, Master, he says, I had a difficult time in town. Why did you have a difficult time? He says, well, he says, wherever I went, he says, I sort of try to share with them the things that I've learned here in the monastery. And no matter where I went and spoke, they laughed at me. And he said, my son, if they did not laugh, it would not be Zen. Simple. So you know how far intuitively you can go or you can't go. But you're being intuitively guided. So it says, through my practice of meditation, God intuitively directs me throughout my workday and in all areas of my life. Work, whatever work I do each and every day, it is God's will that lives through my body, mind, and soul. So each day, it's like I dedicate my body, mind, and soul to God's will. I'm not giving up anything. I'm affirming that which is really within me. He who loses himself for my sake finds himself. He who loses their personal ego for the sake of the God within themselves finds the God within themselves, which is one and the same as themselves, which is the Father and I are one. So again, as you start your day, as you go through your day, you can live it one of two ways. Either saying that you are the doer of everything that's taking place in your day, or that God is. There's a fork in the road within your minds. You make the choice as to which way, which part. You're going to make the left turn or the right turn. Make the turn that turns inward to that presence. And acknowledge it each and every day. It is not I, but the Father that did this good thing. It is not I, the Father that made the sale. It is not I, the Father that sang the song. It is not I, the Father that has healed the patient. It is not I, but the Father which doeth these good works. And if you stumble along the way, then you know that you are out of attunement for a few moments, but then you just do not take it on to your personal ego, but you release it. I release whatever has gone wrong to the healing presence of God within myself. My personal ego does not exist, therefore I cannot wallow in tears. Again, my personal ego does not exist, therefore I cannot wallow in tears. The moment your personal ego exists, you feel remorse, you feel guilt, you feel conscience, you feel poor self-image. We could pick up a book on psychology and give you all of the different neuroses and different things that you can feel, and because you become split, fragmented within yourself. And what's the old expression from the New Testament? A house divided against itself cannot stand. So if one time you're thinking I'm a personal ego and the next time you're thinking I'm the manifestation of the universe, you're bouncing back and forth. You're on a ping pong table, throwing the ball of reality back and forth. I am, I'm not. I am, I'm not. I am, I'm not. You're leading a very confusing life. If you follow what I've just described to you here, 4 reminders during the day, the meditation to make this a reality, because the meditation eventually discloses that indeed the only real life inside of you is the universe. You'll walk in the light. You want to walk in the darkness, you will be filled with all kinds of junk. All kinds of hallucinations, all kinds of distortions, all kinds of things that will make you feel miserable. So the question I have to ask you is, do you want to feel miserable? Have you made misery a way of life? Do you like to get on the phone and complain to people? Do you like to send them text messages complaining about how, well, let's bring it up to date. Do you like to sit at your computer and tell people how absolutely miserable you are? Come on. Remember the song, there's got to be something better than this? Of course. You might find somebody that'll feel sorry for you, be willing to pay some of your bills so that you don't have to accept the responsibility going out and working. But that's because you don't really believe in God. If you believed in God, you'd say, I will work and I will come to the top of my company. I will make this business succeed. I will do it because it isn't me, the personal I, it is God that is working. God wakes up in the morning in my bed and pretends he's me. That's all. It's a game of let's pretend. The moment you see through the game and you accept your responsibility, then you start to accomplish things in your life. Whether it's your financial life, whether it's your creative life, your personal life, the moment you get off of the pity pot, things start to happen. Stay on the pity pot, it's a very lonely place to be. Solves nothing. All right, I said about meditating. Let's take that moment right now. This will be our time here to work meditation into our day. So if you would you sit back in your chairs, put both feet flat on the floor, your ankles crossed, whichever is most comfortable and convenient to you. And let's take a few moments to go into ourselves, to feel, to sense, to be in oneness. For a few moments, I turn away in mind and sensory awareness from the outer world that surrounds me, that I may enter into the inner world of my own mind, soul, and spirit. To, for a few moments, leave the physical world and physical skies behind me, that I may enter into a world of endless sky, of endless consciousness, that I may contact the beginning and the ending of life as spirit and as mind everywhere present. And so I close off my outer senses to the exterior world, that I may enter into the interior world of my own mind, to travel through the corridors, the passages, the hallways, the byways of consciousness that lead to that one place of light within me. Of light within me and yet infinitely beyond me. For I am part of the divine mystery that is and has always been. I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end of all that is, will be, and ever has been. I seek the light within myself, and I feel that the light is seeking me. I seek the light within myself, and I feel that the light is seeking me. For we are in truth forever one, and any sense of separation is but an illusion in my mind, and therefore I set aside the illusion and open the entirety of my consciousness and my beingness to the God-light universe, mind, spirit, that is within me and yet infinitely beyond me, that seems to exist in the time and space of this world, but in actuality is unlimited timeless, birthless, deathless. That here within myself I may awaken from this dream of personal selfhood and awaken to the full light within my mind and within my consciousness, to the ever-present beauty of eternal life. That my mind may be Christed and I may have this awareness that the Father, Mother, God, and I are one life, living through this created body, in this created universe, and yet never having left the Creator. I sit for a few moments now to be in peace, to be the stillness that I am. In a few moments, I'll return my mind and my senses back to this physical world that surrounds me. And yet I will realize that even this physical world that surrounds me dwells in the mind of God, which dwells in me. That I am inseparable in all that I do, think, inseparable from every act that I am engaged in my daily work, my daily activities, that my outer body houses the Lord God of the universe and is the temple, the living temple of God, who is the great doer of all things, the creator of all in my life, the power, the real power within me to accomplish, to be, to give. I am that which I am. For this, I am thankful. Thankful that I am in alignment with the truth and self-reality of who and what I am. And so ever so slowly now, ever so slowly and gently, I'll begin to open my eyes. And as I open my eyes, I'll stretch my arms and my hands high over my head. And I do this as a symbolic gesture of always reaching for something higher in my life, knowing that that something higher that I reach for is to be found in the height of who and what I truly am within myself, a living, breathing manifestation of the stars of the heavens, of universal life, mind, having taken image, shape, form, and embodiment. I bring down my hands, resting in this Christed awareness of the truth that I am. And so it is.